All right, let's get started. So I'm going to start off with a quiz. I have a couple of questions. So I have some prizes as well. I will hand it over to you at the end of the presentation if you get it right. So the first question is, how many API calls are made in a single day on eBay? Now, don't try to Google it. Google does not contain the answer yet. So shout out the answer. 20 million is the answer. No, it's much, much higher. 160? Much higher. 1 billion. The gentleman in the first row gets it right. That's right. It's a billion. So the second question, how many applications are active on eBay? 100 is too low. What's it? 12,000? Very close. Very close. 15,000 is a little higher, somewhere between 12,000 and 15,000. 13,000, there we go. So both of you, whoever got the answers right, just come and contact me after the presentation. I have some eBay T-shirts for you. Okay, my name is Dilip Varadarajan, and I'm a senior manager with the selling team of eBay. I'm a software development manager. So this is the agenda for my talk today. I am going to give a brief introduction about the talk. Then I'm going to go over the basic APIs that are available for integration. Specifically, I'm going to focus on APIs that are available for listing, APIs available for managing inventory and managing orders. And then I'm going to talk about the services and tools that are available for large merchant integration. Then I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about how to pick the right integration solution, and then I'm going to have a few minutes for question and answer. Now, this presentation is aimed at providing you a high-level overview of integrating with eBay from a seller's perspective. At eBay, we divide our sellers into two broad segments, the casual sellers and the business sellers. I have put in some criteria here on how we divide our sellers. It's not important to understand the criteria, but it's important to note that we divide the sellers into two segments. Now, think of a casual seller as someone who finds an item in his or her garage and puts up that item for sale on eBay. And this casual seller typically does not have any inventory or order management solutions of their own. What they are looking for is a very simple interface, whether it be on the web or whether it be on the mobile application. Now, the business sellers, on the other hand, have very different needs. So they may have their own inventory management systems. They may have their own order management systems. And what they are looking for are APIs that allow them to integrate what they have with eBay. And this is the reason why we try to segment our sellers. We want to cater to the needs of the sellers in these two segments. Now, eBay has a vast library of APIs that you can use to provide solutions to sellers in both these segments. Now, eBay's own tools, such as the Sell Your Item form on the web or the mobile application for the casual seller segment, or tools such as Selling Manager or File Exchange for the business seller segment, all these tools have been built on top of our APIs. So this is, in a way, how eBay dog foods its APIs. We build our tools on top of the APIs so you can use them more reliably. So creating a listing on eBay. Now, what is a listing? Now, think of a listing as an ad that you put up on eBay for selling your item. Now, if you want to create an ad, you want to give it a title and a description. Now, here is an item for a 2006 Lamborghini. Along with that, you also have to specify the format, whether it is a buy it now format or an auction style format. You'll have to specify the condition. In this case, it's a used car, and the price. It's only $142,000. It's still live on eBay. So you can click that button and buy it right now. Some more information you have to provide us. They are the shipping and the return policies. So all these visual elements translate into XML elements on an API call. The API call is called add item, and this is the API that you would use to create a listing on eBay. Now, the title and the description that you saw in the previous screens get represented as XML elements, title, and description here. When you create a listing on eBay, you will have to tell us the category to which the listing belongs. Now, categories are important both from a seller's perspective as well as from a buyer's perspective. Now, eBay turns on or turns off some features on a category-by-category basis. So get categories is the API that you would call to get the list of categories, and get category feature is the API you would call to get the list of features that are turned on or off for that particular category. Now, from a seller's point of view, why is the category important? At eBay, when we look at all listings in a specific category, we can determine property names and property values that better describe listings in that category. Now, a few years back, we used to have a lot of category managers. So the category managers were experts in certain categories, and they would come up with property names and property values that described the listings in that category. As an example, if you are selling a GPS unit, the property names and values may be the manufacturer. A manufacturer could be Garmin or a few other manufacturers who make GPS units. Or it could be the screen size. Now, with the explosion of categories on eBay, and as eBay was expanding into international markets, we soon realized that this is not scalable for us. Our category managers were not able to keep up with the ever-changing categories like consumer electronics or home and garden. So from an engineering perspective, we spent a lot of time and effort in coming up with intelligent machine learning algorithms. So these algorithms run on a daily basis, look at all the listings that are created in specific categories. They identify which are all the popular ones that are used by our sellers. They identify which are all the popular ones that are clicked by the buyers on our buying site. And then we use those property names and values and recommend them back to the sellers. So we call these property names and values as item specifics, and get category specifics is the API call that you can make to get the list of recommended property names and property values. Now, we highly recommend you to make this API call and present the property names and values to your sellers. When sellers use the property names and values, they get better exposure on our buying site, which leads to better conversion. Now, pictures are also a critical aspect of listing. Now, when it comes to pictures, there are two models of hosting pictures. You can either host it on your end, or you can give your pictures to us to host it on our end. Now, we recommend that you give the pictures to us for the simple reasons of scalability and availability. Now, you can call the upload site-hosted pictures API to upload a picture to eBay. Now, when you call this API, you will send us your picture as an attachment, and we will give you back a URL, which we call it as the eBay picture service URL. You will then use this URL to refer to that picture in a subsequent add item API call. Now, we have seen that creating a listing consists of adding a title, description, price, quantity, condition, etc. Now, at eBay, we understand that there are a lot of commodity items, such as the iPhones, the iPads, which have standard title and description. So in the last few years, eBay has been partnering with a lot of catalog vendors, and we have been increasing our catalog coverage. Now, with a catalog product, you don't have to tell us what the title or the description is. We know from the product, we can get the title, description, as well as pictures. Now, you can make a Find Products API call to get the list of products that eBay has in its catalog. Now, every product is identified by a unique identifier that we call as EPID, which stands for eBay Product ID. Now, those of you who have worked with Amazon, this is very similar to Amazon's ASIN, which is the Amazon Standard Identifier. Now, a lot of sellers were asking, what if we don't find the product in your catalog? What do we do then? Do we have to send us your title and description, and do we have to repeat it over and over again? Now, the answer is no. We recently rolled out a feature that allows our seller community to add products to our catalog. Add products is the API call that you can use to add a product to our catalog. But note that a product that is created by one seller is available for other sellers to use. So this is our way of increasing the catalog coverage. Now, a good friend of mine and a colleague of mine, Bala, is going to dig deeper into these APIs at a session tomorrow at 3 p.m. in the same hall. So if you are interested in learning more about using our APIs and using our EPIDs or adding and enriching our catalogs, I recommend that you attend that session. Now, products simplify the listing to some extent. But we also heard from our sellers that they have to send in their shipping policy and return policy with each and every listing. Now, when we spoke to our sellers, we quickly understood that they have a handful of shipping policies and return policies, and there is no reason for them to send it in each and every listing. So we are currently working on creating global policies. So these policies will allow a seller to set a handful of shipping or return policies and then refer to these policies by name when you make an add item call. We strongly believe that with us increasing the catalog coverage, increasing the catalog quality, as well as embarking on global policies, we will drastically simplify the experience of integrating with eBay. Now, so far, we have seen the APIs that are available for creating a listing on eBay and what a listing constitutes. What are some of the metadata that you have to call up front before you make an add item call. Now, let's move on to managing inventory. Now, let's say that you have created a few listings and you have to start managing the listings. Now, in order for you to effectively manage a listing, it is important for you to understand the life cycle of a listing. Now, when you create a listing, you can specify the start time of the listing to be a time in the future. So I can create a listing right now by making an add item call. Now, there is a tag in the add item call that says schedule time. Now, I can pass in today's time. Let's say I pass in today's time at 8 p.m. When I do that, the listing is in a scheduled state. In this state, the listing is not available for buyers. Buyers will not be able to see this listing. Only the particular seller who created the listing will be able to see that listing. Now, when the current time is greater than the scheduled time, or when the clock reaches 8 o'clock tonight, the listing that I created in the scheduled state becomes active. Now, this is an automatic transition. You don't have to do anything. When the clock moves, the state automatically transitions to active. When the listing is in the active state, it gets indexed by our search backend, and it is available for buyers to bid or buy on. Now, when the current time is greater than the scheduled end time, or when all of the quantity on the listing gets sold out, then the listing reaches the ended state. From this state, the seller can perform a relist action to make it active when he has more inventory. When the listing is in the scheduled or active state, eBay runs certain rules in its backend. By running certain rules, it can figure out whether the listing contains malicious content or whether it has some fraudulent activity going on. When either of these two policy violations are detected, our customer service representatives have the ability to suspend the listing and notify the seller. Now, when the seller gets notified, he may contact our CSRs, or the customer service representatives. And between them, if they determine that no policies were violated, or if the seller is willing to work with us and change the listing, then they can move the listing from the suspended state to the ended state, from where they can relist the item. When the listing is in the scheduled or the active state, the seller also has the ability to end the listing. Now, this is important for sellers who operate on more than one channel. Let's say a seller has his own storefront, and he is also operating on eBay. And if an item gets purchased on the storefront, he needs to quickly come back and edit the quantity and reduce the quantity on eBay or bring down the listing. We offer that flexibility for the seller to end his listing at any point of time. As you can imagine, we have APIs that cover all these different states and actions. GetSellerList is the API that you would make to get a list of listings that a seller has. There are filters to this API that allow you to get the listings in various states. This API returns you a list of item IDs. And if you want to know more about those items, you can make a getItem call, which will return you back item attributes such as the description, title, price, etc. Now, going back to the example of a seller having his own storefront and operating on eBay, he may have more than 2 channels. He may be operating on other marketplaces as well. It is important for you to keep the inventory in sync. Now, there are 2 ways by which you can keep the inventory in sync. You can either use the pull mechanism or the push mechanism. Now, GetSellerEvents is the API call that allows you to keep the inventory in sync. And it's a pull mechanism because you have to poll us repeatedly at a fixed interval. And we will give you the list of item IDs that have had at least one state transition. If you want to adopt our push model of keeping inventory in sync, then you can use our notification framework. These are notifications that eBay generates and pokes you at a URL that you register with us with a payload that indicates what that transition is. So you can use either of these 2 mechanisms for keeping the inventory in sync. Now let's move on to managing orders. So when we talk about orders, there is a buyer view and there is a seller view. An order is created when a buyer wins an auction or purchases a fixed price listing. When the buyer does this, what the seller sees is an order that has not yet been paid. Now, this is a crucial distinction between eBay and other marketplaces. At eBay, you can get orders that have not yet been paid for. Now, as a buyer, I'm sure all of you have purchased a few items on the web. If you pull items into a shopping cart and check out the shopping cart, then you don't get into this state at all. This is a state that is fairly unique to eBay. As you can imagine, this state evolves if you are bidding on an auction. The auction ends at 1 a.m. in the morning. When you wake up, you have created an order, but you have not yet paid for that auction. Now, when the seller goes through checkout and pays for the order, what the seller sees is an order that has been paid. Now, paid orders are ready for fulfillment. Let's say the seller ships the item and he uploads a tracking number to the order. Uploading a tracking number to an order automatically triggers an email to the buyer with the tracking number. The buyer receives the tracking number. Now he knows when to expect the delivery of that item. The buyer receives the item, and if it is in the same condition as was described in the listing, he is happy and he leaves a positive feedback. The seller is now happy with the transaction and he leaves a positive feedback for the buyer. Get orders is the API that you can call to get the list of orders. Just like the get seller list API, get orders also has filters that allow you to get the list of orders in different states. You may want to still show your sellers the list of unpaid orders. Now, the list of unpaid orders indicates to the seller that he needs to reserve the quantity. The buyer has already entered into a commitment to pay for that item with the seller. It has various other states, like orders that have been marked as paid but not yet shipped by the seller, orders that have been both paid and shipped, and that is useful for generating profit loss statements later on. Complete sale is the API that you can call to add a tracking number to an order. Leave feedback for leaving a feedback. But in a marketplace, sometimes things don't happen the same way we expect it to happen. If the seller or the buyer is not happy with that order, he or she can create a dispute on eBay. And we have a set of APIs that allow you to manage disputes. We have several other APIs for performing other activities that I am not going to go into the details in this presentation. We have the Get Account API for managing the seller's account. You can use this API as well to create a profit loss statement. You can use the Messages-related API for managing the communications between the buyer and seller. You can use the Get My eBay-related APIs that give you the data that you see on the web, on the My eBay portal. We have several other APIs. All you have to do is to go to x.com, click on that Products tab, and pull down and select eBay. Then you have a set of APIs. They are categorized as trading APIs, shipping APIs, finding APIs, and so on. Now, what we have seen so far are the basic APIs that are available for integration. Now, these APIs are synchronous APIs. Now, what we mean by synchronous is the action you requested in the API gets reflected on the listing or the order without any time lag. So you make a request, you get a response. The response is going to tell you whether the action was successful or there was an error in performing that action. If it was successful, then what you requested for has been propagated to the listing or the order instantaneously. This is very different to the asynchronous set of APIs and calls. In the asynchronous world, we don't talk about individual APIs. We typically talk about feeds. A feed is an XML or a CSV file. What you do in the asynchronous world is you take all the APIs, maybe a list of add item APIs or revise item APIs, and you will put them together, one below the other, in an XML file. You will zip up the file, and you will give it to us. Now, we will process the file using our back-end parallel processing and distributed systems. When you give a file to us, you will have to monitor the progress of the execution of the file. The act of monitoring the progress of the execution is done through a concept called a job. So there are only two concepts in the asynchronous world. One is the file that you will give it to us, which contains a list of actions to be performed. The second is a job that you create to monitor the progress of the execution of the file. Now, we have APIs on both these topics. We have file management APIs and a job management set of APIs. The asynchronous mechanism is well understood by an event diagram. So on the left-hand side, what you see is the seller's application. Like I said, we have two services. One is the bulk data transfer service. This is the service that allows you to manage the jobs. The second is the file transfer service. The file transfer service has operations such as upload file and download file that allows you to upload a file to us and download a file from us. Now, the first step that you would do here is to create an upload job. When you call this operation on this service, what you get back is a job ID and an input file reference ID. All you have done so far is just created a job. You have not given your file to us. The second step that you do is to upload the file using the job ID and the input file reference ID. And the third step is to start the job. Now, we could have as well started the job when you uploaded the file, but we want to give you flexibility so that you can upload the files to us and start it at a time that is convenient for you. We recommend that you wait for 15 minutes after you have submitted your files to us, and then poll by using the getJobStatus API. When the file has been processed, the getJobStatus API call will return you back the output file reference ID. You will use the download file operation on the file transfer service to download the output file for the input file that you gave us. Now, by using standard unique identifiers in the output file, you can correlate the response with the requests that you had in the input file. Now, today we support up to a 15 meg compressed file, which usually expands to about 180 or 190 meg. Now, the large merchant services have been in use for the last about 3.5 years. When we started polling our merchants about large merchant services, they still said that it takes a lot of time to integrate with eBay. And when we started polling further, we understood that a lot of time was spent on data transformation. So the merchants spent a lot of time in transforming the data that they had in their databases into add item or revise item or relist item API calls. Now, the second thing that they told us was the inconsistent behavior that eBay has. So in some categories, we support fixed price as a format. In some categories, we have a good catalog coverage. But in some other categories, our catalog coverage is not that high. So you have to code for these inconsistent behavior. Now, last summer, a few of us got together and started thinking about these problems. Now, we wanted to solve the first problem by creating a thin layer where we wanted sellers and integrators to write simple JavaScripts to perform the transformation. We picked JavaScript because of its prevalent use. We could have picked any other scripting language. So we wanted to solve it by using a JavaScript layer. And for the second problem, we identified that you cannot solve this problem without storing products and policies in a middle tier. In other words, we wanted to create a middle tier that was in between merchants and eBay. And it hid the complexities of eBay by providing a consistent interface. With this solution in mind, we rolled out the merchant integration platform a few months back. This is a brand new platform. It is available in beta for select customers. And the way you work with this platform is represented in a picture here. The first step is to write simple JavaScripts. We will give you a lot of skeletal code. All you have to do is to override a few methods in JavaScript and then upload it using an admin app. Step one is to zip up the JavaScript files and upload it to us. Step two is for the merchant to deposit his files in a secure FTP location. Now, with steps 1 and 2, we have the merchant's data files in the merchant's data format. He doesn't have to transform his data in any other format. And we have the JavaScript files, which know how to transform the data from the merchant's format into eBay's format. Using these two, we will create the listings on eBay. Now, you may think of it as, what is so difficult about using JavaScript to transform one file to the other? We could have as well used any other translation technologies, like even XSL for that matter. Now, the difference here is that we want to support standard e-commerce notions. We don't want to provide a transformation layer that just takes one data format and transforms it into another data format. We take in feeds that are well understood by our merchants. So we support product feeds. These are products that a merchant has in his inventory. We support inventory feeds, and we support order feeds in a format that they expect. Now, it is the responsibility of the middle tier platform to map a seller's product with an eBay product in categories where eBay's coverage is good. And in categories where eBay does not even have a catalog coverage, it is again the responsibility of the middle tier platform to make the appropriate add item calls and provide the title and the description. It goes beyond that. So eBay, for example, does not have the notion of out of stock. So there is no such thing like out of stock on eBay. When a listing ends, when the scheduled end time reaches, or when all the quantity has been bought out, the listing reaches an ended state, and sellers will have to do an action called relist to resuscitate that listing back. Now, this is something that is not very well understood. eBay is probably the only marketplace that has an action where you have to go and manually click on a button or make a different API call to get back the listing into action. So we solve that problem as well. And of course, on the reverse way, when an order happens on eBay, we reverse map it, and we deposit the order files on the merchant's SFTP account in a format that the merchants can take and process it with their backend systems. So the key takeaway here, the merchants don't have to change their data format. They give us files in a format that they can export from their inventory systems. They write simple JavaScripts to translate their format into our format. Just by doing this, they can expedite their time to integrate with eBay. Now, here is a sample JavaScript. It's as simple as taking the merchant's retail price. And then in this case, he wants to do a 50% off of MSRP for a sale. And then he can provide his policy. In this case, he says that his payment policy is PayPal only. A few months back, when we were at the time of rolling out this beta, I wrote a blog article on our tech blog. So for those of you interested in understanding the technique behind how this platform works, you can just go to ebaytechblog.com and then type in merchant integration platform. Or alternately, if you choose, you can remember this easy to remember URL as well. So if you would like to become an integration partner with us, if you would like to onboard merchants using our platform, you can send an email to timbrown@tabrown@ebay.com. So we have covered the APIs that are available for integrating directly with eBay. We have talked about the large merchant services, and we have also talked about the merchant integration platform. So I wanted to give you a few points to consider when you are embarking on integrating with eBay. The first is the seller segment. Are you providing a solution for the casual seller segment or the business seller segment? Remember that sellers in these two segments have widely varying expectations. Casual sellers are looking for a simple tool that allows them to list their item on eBay, whereas the business sellers are looking for sophisticated inventory management, order management, or communication tools and services. Synchronization. How are you going to keep your data in sync with eBay? Are you going to use a push or a pull model? We recommend that you use a push model, that is pushing from eBay to you. And every once in a while, use the pull model to reconcile inventory. This is just to make sure that you don't miss any events. It is possible that there was a network failure. It is possible that your systems are down, or it's also possible that eBay misses one event every once in a while. Scalability. How are you going to solve the problem of scalability? Do you want to solve it on your end, or do you want to use large merchant services and hand over the scalability problem to eBay? Synchronous versus asynchronous. Now again, we recommend that you start off with the synchronous solutions. Synchronous solutions are easy to code against, well understood by the sellers. But as the seller's business grows, you may want to think about moving your solution to an asynchronous mechanism. Now, when sellers, what we have noticed on eBay is as sellers grow their business, they tend to become a lot more flexible with when changes take place on eBay. A seller who is listing, let's say, 100,000 SKUs on eBay does not expect all 100,000 SKUs to go at the same point of time. He is fine if it takes a couple of hours for any solution to create 100,000 listings on eBay. Time to market. It pretty much goes with the same point. Synchronous APIs are a little bit easier to use. For those of you who were here for the previous presentation, there are tools that are available on our developer website where you can create an API, you can click a button, you can see the results instantaneously. And data retention. Now, eBay retains data only for 4 months. All of the orders are kept on eBay's databases for 4 months, after which we move them onto tape drives. So when you call an API, you get data that is only about 4 months old. If you want to create profit loss statements that span a year, or if you want to mine data over longer periods of time, then you may want to store the data on your end. With that, I conclude this presentation. And if you have any questions, I'd be glad to take them at this time.
Using the push model, you're looking on mobile. On pushing to, say, an iPhone might be problematic if they're not there, this sort of thing, as you would have on a normal presence on the web. Mm-hmm. So mobile offers different things. I know Google has made accounts for this. Any suggestions in that area?
So right now, our notification framework only allows you to register a HTTP URL, and we will ping you on that URL. You may want to store the events on your end and choose an appropriate method for pushing that onto mobile devices. So that's the mechanism we have today, but we also have a mobile team, and we have some thoughts going on in that area as well, but nothing concrete.
Yeah. Thank you.
I have a question about when developing eBay integration into a custom e-commerce platform, is it unwise to think in the time frame of like phasing it so that you can actually get the listings out there as quickly as possible for the merchant, but how they handle the order, maybe they do it through the eBay interface until at such time a back-end interface? Because it seems like there's going to be a lot of calls that have to be done to facilitate the fulfillment part of it. Is that an unwise decision to fragment your process?
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. It's actually eBay's own tools. I don't know if you know if you have heard of a tool called TurboLister. Now, TurboLister is a client-side tool that allows you to only create listings on the web, on eBay. So the reason behind that is, as you rightly said, sellers typically have multiple systems that they work with. We are trying our level best to provide one solution that works for all. But there is nothing wrong in providing a solution that creates the listings, and then get some marketing behind it. And then once you see some traction, you may want to poll your customers to see what they want to see next. Creating listings is one aspect of it. But a lot of sellers want to keep updating their price and quantity frequently. This is especially true for sellers who are operating on multiple channels. So it's not just about creating listings. You will have to make repeated revise listing API calls to revise certain key attributes like price and quantity. And then, like I was demonstrating the state diagram, you also have to manage when the seller runs out of quantity. So when the seller wants to pull down his listing. So there are various aspects that you want to take care of, even within listing. Like pictures is always a complicated area because the sellers themselves do not know how to upload the pictures. So sometimes they may want to give you a zip file and ask you to manage it on their behalf. Sometimes they want to host it on some other picture hosting provider, and they want a reference to that URL. So listing itself is a deep area. So if you want to work on that, if you want to roll out a product and get some marketing behind it, it's certainly the right way to think about it.
If you were writing a dynamic pricing agent like you were talking about, something that changed prices, would you use LMS and batch revise item calls, or would you just constantly call revise item on an interval?
So it depends on your use case and the scale at which you are operating. The advantage with the revise item call is that it is a synchronous call. So you make the API call, you get the response back, the price or the quantity has been updated on the site. Now, what you put in a file and give it to us, it roughly takes about 15 minutes before the file is processed. We are working heavily to decrease the time, but still we are working with merchants who give us a file that has about 170 or 180 megs of data. So it takes time for us to process in our backend systems. So that is...
you can do that in 15 minutes?
15 minutes, yes.
That many reprice? Because that would be a lot faster than I could probably reprice them.
That is correct. That's why if it is volume-based, if you are working with sellers who have like 100 SKUs, then you may want to create some threads on your end, and you may be able to solve that problem more efficiently than we can with our asynchronous mechanism. But if you are dealing with a seller who has 100,000 SKUs, then the game is different. Right? So that's what you may want to think about.
One of the things we notice with LMS is there's a lot of redundant data in listing creation. Is there a lighter version that might happen with LMS so you would only have to give a few fields that you fill in, for catalog items, say UPC or ISBN, and price and quantity, and get rid of all the redundancy in the other ones?
Yes, I think that, but our solve is going to crucially hinge around increasing our catalog coverage and global policies. When we roll out global policies by Q1 of next year, you will be able to set up policies for shipping, policies for returns, and policies for payments. Now, if you look at an add item call that you put in an LMS, and if you take away elements that are related to shipping, related to returns, and related to payments, and if you can take away elements that describe the item, like the title and the description, and replace it with our product identifier as EPID, then you can imagine the add item call going from, let's say, 200 elements as it exists today to, say, about 20 or 30 elements. So we feel that that will be a big win for us, a big win for our integrators, and a big win for our merchants. So we are actively working on it. So please expect to hear from us by Q1 of next year.
Thanks.
Yes, I think that, like I said, Bala, who's going to go deeper into these areas. So right now, I think that we are still figuring out what is the right policy that eBay has to take. Let's say that a seller, one seller creates a product with a unique identifier. What we want to do is another seller creates the same product but with a slightly different variation of that. Now, who wins, right? So what we want to do is to have a lot of mechanisms in place that will prevent you from creating duplicates in the first place. Let's by chance, we couldn't catch it and there were slight variations that our machine learning algorithms couldn't figure out. Let's say we ended up with creating 2 products. Then we want to establish a process by which the products will get vetted out. Right now, the process is largely with eBay's catalog team members. So these members are pretty much, they have worked with several different kinds of catalog products, and we crowdsource to some extent as well. Now, for those of you who don't know what crowdsourcing is, we give both the products to, let's say, a group of 100 people, and we ask them to vote which one better describes the product. And then based on that voting, we decide which product wins. Now, when we do that, we will go through a process, and we will tell the seller who submitted the other product that his product is no longer going to be accommodated in our catalog, and he needs to update his reference to the product that won. This doesn't mean that you cannot update the product that won. Right? Creating is just one aspect. And again, we want to enable our community to update the product and go through a process by which the community vets the updates. We really want to empower our community to increase our catalog coverage, because we won't get it right. We are not knowledgeable in each and every category.
Maybe one more question?
All right. That's the end of it. Thanks. Thank you, everyone.